Jim?
Lunch is over.
Lunch is over? Yeah, I was just gonna recess and reconvene, since we have a motion. Was she the one that told me that?
Well, she said for me to get a motion to go out and to come in.
Was that mine? That's mine.
Is this yours?
I think so, because I had mine right here.
I have mine somewhere here, because it was all laying. Oh, that's mine.
Okay. Okay, it's 2:00. I'll entertain a motion to come out of recess.
I'll make a motion, Judge, we come out of recess.
Second. Motion by Commissioner Fowler, second by Commissioner Martin, to come out of recess. Is there any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay, so at 2:00, we're out of recess, and the agenda item is, okay, Richard L. Jackson County Judge, 2 p.m. Txdot workshop. And Darcy, Darcy Chappelle is gonna take the floor and,
Thank you so much, and we're gonna stand right back here, if that's okay for y'all.
That's good.
Presentations are here and there. My name is Darcy Shapool, I'm with the Texas Department of Transportation. Can y'all hear me okay? Okay, great. And this is Tina Geiselbrecht with the Transportation Institute at Texas A&M. And we're gonna go through a short presentation today, and we're gonna talk about rural planning, and then talk about some of the statistics and we'll just go ahead and get started. And feel free, if you have questions as we go, to go ahead and ask them, so that, you get them answered when you have them.
So, as Darcy mentioned, we're very happy to be here this afternoon. I'm glad that we can present to the Commissioner's Court. Nice to see a good turnout here. We want this to be informal, so feel free to ask us questions as we go along. We're pretty flexible on everything. As she mentioned, we're going to just go through some basic rural transportation planning 101. I'm going to give you some statistics about what's happening in your county as far as traffic and pavement and population growth and all of those things that contribute to traffic and pavement and those kinds of things. Then we're going, after the presentation, we're going to ask you to come up here and work on these maps that we have taped to the tables up here to help us identify concerns, issues, priorities that you have, and then we'll talk about where we go from there. There we go.
Maybe I need to point it. There we go. Oh, I went far ahead. Okay, so first off, what is a rural planning organization, right? RPOs represent rural and small urban areas outside of metropolitan planning areas. So some of you may be familiar with the Alamo Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. That's the MPO for this region, and it covers the counties of Bexar, Comal, Guadalupe, and a portion of Kendall County. And they are federally required to exist for any area that's over 50,000. So the city of San Antonio is about 1.2 million, and so they hit that 50,000 population a long time ago. And that's what sets that metropolitan planning organization boundary. The non-metropolitan area, the rural area, which Wilson County is a part of, is a voluntary organization. The RPO is a voluntary organization that the county can be part of, and that runs through the Alamo Area Council of Governments, and that's the ARPO. And they were not able normally be here to represent themselves. And so it's the small urban areas that make up the rural area. And I'm gonna show the map here. Okay. Not so much. There we go.
There you go.
Okay. So you can see by this map, it's a little small, but the bright yellow is that metropolitan planning area. The light yellow is that rural planning area. And that's called the Alamo Regional Rural Planning Area. And that's represented by the judges, and some of the small cities are on that board. And they meet about quarterly, sometimes a little more than that, depending on what's going on in the region. And at Txdot, we work with the Rural Planning Organization to help us identify priorities and projects that we can move forward into our planning documents. And we'll talk a little bit more about what those planning documents are. You'll also see Uvalde highlighted out there. They are not part of this Rural Planning Organization, but they're part of the San Antonio District. So we plan for them as well. And so these are keys to the transportation planning process. These are things that we take into account when we're planning the highway system and when we're looking at improvements that need to be done. And this is kind of hard to read, but there is a copy of it on the back that you can actually grab and look at, and it'll give you way more detail than I will probably read to you right now. But we look at like system conditions, we look at the pavement, we look at how's that working, we look at how much traffic is flowing over the sections of roadways to identify when we need to do improvements. We look at population growth. Is an area growing faster than another area that might need additional capacity roadways to accommodate the traffic that's coming? Is there new development that's occurring on certain corridors? The Texas economy. When the economy is booming, people are moving here. We kind of are going through that right now. Certain areas are seeing more growth than other areas, and we'll kind of talk about that. We look at freight movements, where there are traffics. Many of y'all are aware of the Eagle Ford Shale boom that we've had, where we've had a lot of truck traffic going on, and it was really impacting our roadways heavily. And that's a freight thing. Trade. When you're closer to the valley, we get a little more traffic that's associated with that trade across the border, but there's also trade within our own communities where we see some growth that goes on. Technology, we talked about electric vehicles, and what does that mean, and how does that impact our infrastructure, and what do we need to be planning for when it comes to electric vehicles? How do we get electric vehicles from Wilson County into Bexar County, or across the counties over to Bandera? So those are conversations that we're having. Safety, you've got some handouts that are available on the back that show where some of our crash locations are. So we're always looking at that to identify locations where maybe there are engineering improvements that we can do as Txdot, or educational opportunities like with drunk driving, the Click It, the Seatbelt ad campaigns that we've done. Risk and resiliency. This is something that's really important that we look at. Where are we having floodings? Where are our bridges washing out? Do we need to plan for higher bridges, wider bridges? Looking at those flooding patterns. Also, do we have issues with wildfires? Because that can impact our pavement structure as well. So those are the things we think about with risk and resiliency.
So Darcy just went through some of the key factors that influence transportation planning in across the state and in rural areas in particular. And Txdot documents those kinds of things in their planning products. They have the Texas Transportation Plan 2050, which is a long-range plan that is focused on these 7 goals of promoting safety, preserving assets, optimizing system performance, delivering the right projects, and fostering stewardship, so being a good protector of the human and natural environment, and then focusing on the customer sure that you as taxpayers are, you are the customers for the Department of Transportation, so they want to make sure that they are doing right by you. Then there's also the Txdot strategic plan. Txdot is currently operating under a strategic plan that was passed by the Transportation Commission in June of 2018. And it includes specific action plans on how to address those goals that are outlined in that long-range plan. The long-range plan is what Txdot uses to evaluate its long-term investments and priorities. It's statewide, it's multimodal, and it's updated every 4 years. Both of those documents work together to address, how Txdot plans future projects. The next slide kind of shows how you take those really long-range plans and kind of hone in on them. So you've got, that dark blue box, which is the Texas Transportation Plan 2050, and then there are other plans that include corridor studies. The Metropolitan Planning Organization is federally required to make a plan as well. And then you get to the yellowish portion of Txdot's planning products, beginning with the Unified Transportation Program, which is really kind of a list of projects that the department intends to deploy over the next 10 years. I'm not going to say how often it's updated because I get it wrong every time.
We actually update the UTP every year. We get new financial forecasts every year from the comptroller's office, and so we update that with additional projects, and so that's that 10-year document.
And then that's further refined into a 4-year document, which is known as the Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. We are here today to talk to you specifically about the Rural Transportation Improvement Program, which becomes part of that Statewide Transportation Improvement Program. Again, it's a list of projects. If a project is included in the STIP, including the rural projects in the STIP, it is most likely coming to your area soon. You can pretty much count on that. That's not to say that the STIP can't be amended, because it is amended occasionally. Projects are added or priorities change, and a project will get moved out into the 10-year plan again, or it may drop off completely. And then the 2-year letting schedule is really, that's when a project is imminent. It is coming, it's been put out for bid to have people, contractors propose on completing those projects.
Does it take 2 years to get it let? I saw it in the report somewhere.
Normally, no, it doesn't take 2 years to get it let. 2 years is when we think we're guaranteed funding for those 2 years, so we know that those projects will move forward. I believe the letting process, normally when we've identified a month that it will go, it takes about a month to take bids, two months to take bids on that, so that's normally how long it takes. And then it could be, 1 to 3 months before the contractor actually gets started on a project, depending on, especially on the complexity of the project. So talking about the rural tip, this is a list of local projects that are funded, and this is required by the Federal Highway Administration. In order to have federal funds spent on a project, they have to be included in the Transportation Improvement Program. It is a 4-year project list, as Tina mentioned, and we update it every 2 years. But it does get amended more often than that to normally add projects more than take them away, but there are sometimes things that happen, right-of-way is needed, environmental issues that can cause a project to move outside that 4-year time frame. But it is a multimodal list of projects. It will include bike and ped type projects. It will include transit projects as well as freight. And sometimes you'll see an aviation project included in there as well, because we do have general aviation airports that receive funding from the Federal Highway Administration. From the Federal Aviation. Just some rural facts for you. In be cognizant of the changes that are going on. Most of the funds that we get for those areas are formula driven, so lane miles count towards that formula, pavement conditions go towards that formula. The bridge deck area also goes towards that formula. 53% of the Texas Highway Freight Network is located in rural areas as well.
So Darcy mentioned, kind of these statistics deal with, what is the infrastructure that's out there and the assets that are on the ground. The other things that are important to consider when you're talking about rural transportation planning is the fact that about 15% of Texas residents live in a rural area, so an area outside of an NPO boundary. And Txdot has a planned investment of about $4,700 per rural resident, and that's 33% higher than the statewide average. Txdot also keeps track of all their projects, and it includes in a system that they have called Project Tracker, and that includes more than 6,400 projects in rural areas that total almost $23 billion in project cost. And as Darcy mentioned, most of this funding is formula driven, and we're going to talk more specifically about those in just a minute. But before we get to that, Darcy's going to tell you a little bit more about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act that was recently passed by the federal government and how that will impact transportation planning and funding in Texas.
Well, that's where it says 15% of Texas residents live in rural areas. Wilson County, about 2/3 of Wilson County live in rural areas.
So outside
Because
your
we have so many subdivisions.
yeah. Yeah, it's a lot of growth, but your whole county is considered rural.
Just about,
Yeah,
yes.
when it's defined for the Texas Transportation Commission.
Will that
Wilson
affect
County
anything
is-
on projects here?
That you do get more, the challenge with being urban versus rural when it comes to the funding formulas is that there are certain funding sources that are not eligible in rural areas, and we're gonna talk about those in a minute. But yeah, so you don't qualify for the same funding that an urbanized area would qualify for.
Because all of Wilson County, even though you may be like in a city limit somewhere, is considered under the rural definition.
Okay, the whole county.
The whole county. Right now, that we know of, the urbanized area could extend into Wilson County, and then that would be another conversation for us to have about joining the Metropolitan Planning Organization.
Because you might end up, like Darcy showed you that little piece of Kendall County that
I
became
saw
part
that.
of the MPO because of the need to expand the boundary.
The MPO boundary.
Yeah, because, with our latest census, we missed it by, 23 residents, which.
223.
Yeah, 223, but we feel like that number's inaccurate, so,
There's a lot of concern with those census numbers this go around.
Yeah.
yeah, that's it.
But as Darcy mentioned, it's probably a conversation that as Commissioners Court, you probably want to start talking about that to figure out what that's going to mean for you, because as she mentioned, you would have access to maybe some other funding categories, but you may miss out on some different funding categories. So it's a trade-off. You got to consider the pros and cons.
Right, and so that's why, like, Kendall County, the portion that has Bernie, the largest city, decided that they wanted to be part of the Metropolitan Planning Organization back in 2014, when the census numbers came out and the new urbanized area was identified. How'd that work out for them? I think they're pretty happy. Well, okay, so there's always two sides to every story, but it has allowed them to take advantage of some funding that they would not have had the opportunity to take advantage of, like the I-10 corridor, some of the improvements through on 87 and 46. So,
And who do we have that conversation, or where do we start that conversation?
So, Sid Martinez is with the Metropolitan Planning Organization. He's the executive director. And I'm sure he'd be happy to come out here, and Diane Rath would be happy to help facilitate that, as well as we can help with that as too. They already model for Wilson County because of air quality concerns. So Wilson County has been part of the Metropolitan Planning Organization's travel demand model for a long time. So it would be fairly easy to incorporate you into that planning process.
Because most of our a lot of our population lives within 3 miles of the Bear County border, but we don't have a town.
Right.
Within- Livonia is the closest, and it's not the
largest.
not the biggest town in
Right.
Wilson County.
Floresville's your largest, yeah. So I think it's a good conversation to have. Some MPOs are more aggressive with their boundaries. If you look at like the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, the Austin one, you know, they've expanded their boundaries to Bastrop and Burnett and Caldwell County, which to me have always kind of seemed pretty rural. But those counties wanted to be part of the planning process that goes on at the Metropolitan Planning Organization. So it is a conversation to have and something to think about. I think TTI has helped areas kind of look at the pros and cons before. That's one of the efforts that we did with New Braunfels and Guadalupe County, Comal County, before they decided to become part of the MPO. So we can look into that. Just let us know. So moving on to talk about the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. As you know, this is kind of a moving target right now, but this is the best information that we have. It looks like Texas is probably going to get about $26.9 billion for our highway programs that go through our formula funding, which means we're going to see a pretty good chunk of change comes to the state of Texas through our normal avenues of preventative maintenance, safety, bridge, all those programs. It's going to create some new money for bridges. We already do a lot in Texas. Texas has one of the best bridge records in all of the United States as far as inspections and updating our bridges and rehabbing them. But we're going to see some additional money, which will help us with rehabilitation of about $537.2 million. There also is about $450 million that will be going to rural transit. So for this area, the Alamo Rural Transit, ART, we'll be seeing some additional funds come to them to improve their program. And if you have comments, we'll be taking comments on the rural transit portion as well. So if you have thoughts about that, please feel free to share those, even though Art wasn't able to be here today. And then we'll be getting about $407.8 million for the National Electric Vehicle Formula Program, which is a new program to ensure that there is infrastructure available for EVs, electric vehicles. And right now, Txdot, a couple of other agencies is working to develop that plan and what it looks like. So we have to have that turned into the Federal Highway Administration in August. So that is a fast and furious development for our plan. And the next slide shows you about what we think. There we go. So you'll notice that in fiscal year 21, we had about $4.27 billion in the state of Texas for our program. So we're adding almost $1 billion every year out until fiscal year 26 to our transportation program. So that's a pretty significant amount of money that we need our rural partners and our metropolitan partners to help us identify those projects and needs.
So I want to spend a minute talking about some of those rural, the most common categories of funding that are available for rural projects. So you've got the preventative maintenance and rehabilitation project funding category, and those are projects like seal coats and overlays. You remember that one of Txdot's goals was preserving its assets. That is very, very important, probably second only to safety for the department, because they've made such a significant investment in the system that we have. They want to make sure that they are able to maintain it. Statewide Connectivity that funds projects that connect people and places. And so that might be like making a connection from a state highway to the interstate or something like that. The Structures Replacement and Rehabilitation Bridge Program and the Railroad Grade Separation Program are pretty much just like they sound. They provide funding for bridge replacements and to separate railways and roadways. There's funding for safety projects that comes from several different programs, including the Federal Highway Safety Improvement Program, the Federal Railway Highway Crossing Program, and the Safety Bond Program. The Transportation Alternatives and Transportation Enhancements funding category pays for projects that provide things like sidewalk connectivity. If you've got a sidewalk network and you've got gaps in it, you can use funds from this category to help meet those needs. It also funds things like bike lanes and safe routes to schools. And then finally, there's a very small amount of funding that is in the district engineer discretionary funding pot. And this is used for things like if the county has a project that they want to get done and it's a priority and maybe there's like a small gap in funding, the district engineer can use the discretionary funding to kind of help meet some of those needs. The thing that's the important takeaway, I think, from these funding categories is to recognize that everything has to fit into a category, but you may have a project that is eligible in several categories, so you can kind of pool the funding together. So that helps to move projects forward.
And then it's gonna get ahead of me. Oh, do you wanna push it or no? Go ahead, go for it. There we go. So, we've talked about planning, and then we wanna just talk a little bit about programming. And like Tina just said, you have to identify that project, and then you have to identify how that project is to be funded, and that's what we kind of considered how we program those projects. So, there's a limited amount of money, even though we're getting a lot of new money through the new federal bill. There's still never enough money for all the priorities that we have, right? And so the projects will exceed sometimes the funding and exceed the priorities that we have set. So we look to our rural planning partners, we look to the RPO to help us kind of prioritize what those projects look like. And once we make those decisions, it will go into that transportation improvement program.
But as Darcy mentioned,
There we go.
there you go. There may be objectives that are in conflict with one another. As she said, the funding is usually always gonna, or the need is always gonna outweigh the funding usually. Again, that's why it's important to have these workshops. That's why we're here. We want to find out from the rural counties what your issues and priorities are going forward. It also is an opportunity to identify projects that you may have to work with your partners on. So maybe the city of Floresville and the county want to work together, or maybe Wilson County needs to partner with Karnes County or something like that. It helps to get regional agreement on what the priorities are for the region.
There we go.
So as we're thinking about what those challenges are and what the priorities are, I think it's also important to kind of consider some facts about the county, where you are now and then where you're expected to be over the next several years. So this graphic shows the state population, the projected population changes according to the state demographer. On the map on the left of the entire state, you can kind of see the areas that get progressively bluer are significant, greater than 400% population growth in the time period between 2010 and 2050. So again, some of that is projected out, and we're going to show you some slides in a little bit that some of the other counties that we've talked to have kind of questioned the accuracy of those, but that's, up for debate at the state demographer's office. But one thing that we do know for sure is the entire state, just about the entire state of Texas is increasing in population and is projected to continue to increase in population. And I would not be surprised if this map changed pretty significantly given the last 2 years of COVID and people being much more flexible in where they work. So the graphic on the right, you see Wilson County is expected to add about almost 38,000 people over that same time period. Again, these are things that you want to consider when you're thinking about transportation projects for the future. In the next couple of slides, kind of hone in on this particular area. So you can see the projected population for Wilson County. The blue is the historic population and the red is the projected population. So you've got a pretty significant jump between 2020 and 2040 with, what is that, about 20,000 people increase, 20,000% increase in population. The next slide just kind of shows Wilson County compared to the other rural counties in the region. If you wanted to compare like who's had faster population growth, that kind of thing, this bar chart kind of allows you to visualize that a little bit better. Again, all of these slides are included in one of those little handouts that's on the back bench back there. It's also important to consider the age of your population in your county. That's important when you're thinking about what kinds of transportation investments that you want to make. In Wilson County, the average age over the last, what is that, 5, 6, 7 years, about 40. So kind of middle of the road there. If you were, for example, like in Bandera County that has the highest average age, you want to think about, maybe as your population ages, not as many people are able to drive. So you want to consider options for transit and those kinds of things to help people get around in their county as well as from one county to another. The next one just breaks down the age by male and female, and then groups you to see where, like, how many people, not how many people, but the rough percentage of people in each of those age categories. In Wilson County, you're pretty spread out. So you've got a big portion of the population that's, like under 10, and then pretty even all the way up to about, 70. So what that tells me, and just kind of glancing at this, is that you've got a lot of needs that you need to consider. You've got the kids trying to get to school, as well as older population that may be limited on their driving.
And then I'm going to go through some of these maps just to help you guys think about when we come and sit down at these maps where some of your challenge areas may be, and to think about what types of improvements would benefit Wilson County.
And these are all available in 8.5 by 11 and 11 by 17 back there. Because normally we put big maps on the wall so you can get a good look at them. But we didn't want to mess up the Pullman courthouse, so we printed big ones if you need to zoom in on anything.
So this one is just your average daily traffic in Wilson County, and probably you all know it, where that red line is on 87. That's your highest volume traffic. You'll notice that there's some bright orange on,
I think that's 180.
actually,
Yeah,
that's
181.
181.
The
Sorry,
the
thank
red
you very
line's
much.
181.
The orange one is 87, so that's your next highest volume of traffic. And then you see as you move outside of that county that your traffic falls off, which makes sense because the San Antonio, Bexar County is kind of moving out towards Wilson County. The next one is truck volume. patterns, but there's more towards that Karnes County area. You're seeing some higher volumes of truck traffic, and that's that Eagle Ford Shale movement of people.
Yeah, but all the sand trucks go down 97 to Floresville and come down.
Okay. And let's see. I'm trying to my eyeballs are. I live it. Like if you live it, you see it. So those are the things we're gonna ask you to if you see something that doesn't look as accurate as you think it should be, you can mark that on these maps up here when we start to do that. And it may be relative to what these other roadways are seeing as well.
When was this information?
So this is 2020, so it's pretty current. It would be pre-COVID. We're in 2022, I know, but as far as traffic volumes go, we're about a year behind because we have to look at that QA/QC, the data as we collect it. So we collect traffic volumes every other year in all our counties and roadways.
Sand truck traffic is what?
That's awesome. We'll put that on the map and we'll document it.
Yep.
We'll document it. So then we also like to look at the 3 lanes that we have. So when we think of 3 lanes, is it 2 lanes, 3 lanes, or 4 lanes? That's one of the things we take a look at. If we've got a 2-lane roadway and we're having some crashes, we'll look at adding a center turn lane. So that data is good for us to know. And sometimes these maps don't get updated as often as they should. When we were in Karnes County, there were a couple of roadways that hadn't been upgraded to show that they were 3 lanes. And so we made some documentation out of that as well to share with the district. Lane width is important. Most of the roadways in Wilson County that are on the state highway system have between 10 and 12 feet lane width. And that's pretty much our standard. Sometimes you'll see 14 to 15 wide lane, outside lanes, which was a normal accommodation that we made for cycling. But we're trying not to do that anymore and actually provide either shoulders or actual bike lanes for our cycling community. Pavement quality. This is a pavement map that shows where we need improved pavement conditions. County looks pretty good. You'll see some areas of red and yellow, and hopefully some of where you see that red and yellow will correspond to some seal coat or overlay projects that we have planned in the future. And I should highlight that Will and Mark are here from the area office and the maintenance office, and so they'll be able to answer specific questions that you may have. This is our crash location and the density of those crashes. So, you see that highlight there where it's red with the green around it. That has a large number of crashes from 2018 to 2020. This is the time frame. We use 3 years worth of crash data to look at what we're going to request funding for safety projects. So this would be the maps that we would use to look at those. And we look at crashes down to the detail of what caused the crash and those types of things to identify countermeasures so that we can make the appropriate, project to correct the issue.
Red lights ain't stopped the crashes, they still happen at the red lights.
People forget to look for the red
No
light,
offense, but
put the
Shannon
brakes
Ridge, we
on.
still got the, at least once a week.
It doesn't matter, does it?
Nope,
And Sutherland Springs Road.
I know Southern Spring Road
That's
and
almost daily
Walmart.
during school.
It's consistent. And then this is just to identify where the fatal crashes were from 2011 to 2020. The colors of the circles have nothing to do with the type of crash it was. It's actually the year of the crash. So the most current crash is kind of a maroon color, and the oldest crash is a darker hunter green. So you'll notice that there are quite a few crashes going on out there. These are our funded projects. This map shows where we've completed projects from 2016 to 2021. And then this map shows you where our planned projects are. There we go. For 2022 to 2026. And you'll notice we're trying to do a really good job of maintaining those corridors that are out there. There's a lot of seal coat and overlay projects planned from 2022 to 2026. The corridors that are red, those are safety projects that have been proposed, and there is a list of projects back there. You can specifically see what those projects are, a little more of a description, and we can talk about those a little more. And then last, okay, and this is kind of an interesting chart. This allows you to see where we've been spending money in Wilson County over the past 10 years, or not, past 5 years to the future. And the light blue is preventative maintenance, which we talked about. That's really important in the rural areas, is to keep that asset. The green is discretionary fund. So our district engineer spent some money in 2017 in Wilson County. We've had quite a few bridge projects in 2020. That's the gray. And I believe a good portion of those have been off-system bridges that we've worked on with the county. Let's see. Safety projects are the gold ones, and quite a few safety projects. So to be shown by that crash history that you have. And then category 9, we've been really lucky in Wilson County to get a number of projects funded through our transportation enhancements. We have one in Floresville that's on your rails to trails. That's going to be under construction in the next couple of years. And then Livernia received some funding for some sidewalks, as well as, I'm forgetting one. No, I think that's it. Yeah. So 2 projects. Both, and both received some funds. So, so those are some opportunities there that Wilson County is going to want to take advantage of in their community.
So, we're just about done with the presentation. Darcy's gonna show you one more slide after this to kind of tell you what the next steps are. But I wanna, talk about what we want y'all to do, the work part of this workshop. So we've got 3 maps on the tables up here, that show the funded projects, that are upcoming 2022 to 2026. So that's gonna help you know, okay, well, these projects are coming, and these are the kinds of work that's going to be done in the county. But we want you to identify additional projects or issues or concerns, things that maybe is not on the list yet, but that need to be considered. Again, as we talked about the planning efforts, we want you to kind of think regionally. You can think beyond the next 4 years to more long-term. Consider Txdot's priorities. Consider how you might work with your partners to have a project that has like regional consensus that you want to move forward. We've got the 3 maps because we want to divide the projects into different types. So down here we'll do safety and maintenance. So this is where you would identify projects where maybe there's an area that needs more lighting, or an area of roadway that could use a center turn lane, or passing lanes, or turn lanes, those kinds of things. We'll use the middle map to do bicycle, pedestrian, or transit type projects. So, for example, maybe there is a need to have a bus route from Floresville to Hope, or something like that. That doesn't currently exist. That's where you could identify those kinds of projects. Maybe there's an area of town that needs sidewalks in front of a school, or something like that. That's where we want you to identify those kinds of projects. And then at the far map, we'll use that to identify connectivity and mobility projects. So that's where you might want to demonstrate a project that needs more capacity on 181 or something like that.
So when we came 6 years ago, 87 was identified as one of those corridors, and we've actually been able to get the funding to improve that do listen when we come, and we do our best to get these projects implemented once they've been identified. So, I mean,
She got
so
it.
she got that right. She was ahead of me. So this is just our timeline, so you know what this process looks like. We've been having some grant workshops with the Alamo Regional Rural Planning Organization in November through March. We'll be at the Alamo Regional Rural Planning meeting next week on Wednesday, and we have someone that's going to be presenting about aviation grants. So if your community has a general aviation airport and you'd like more information on that, I would tune in. I believe it's going to be virtual, so you don't actually have to go to the meeting to see it. Then we've been visiting with all the counties. So we will have been to all 11 counties by next week to visit with them and ask them the same questions. And we will, I got ahead of me. So then we'll be developing a report that we will provide to the rural judges that participate in the Alamo Regional Rural Planning Organization to take a look at the comments that were made, to take a look at the projects that they identified. And we'll present them with kind of a draft of the Transportation Improvement Program for the 2023 to 2026 timeframe. And we'll have a public meeting on that in May at the Alamo Regional Rural Planning Organization's meeting. And once that's been completed, that document will move on to our statewide to be approved by our Transportation Commission. And then it will move on to be approved by the Federal Highway Administration. And normally we get approval of that in October. And we start to work on those projects almost within that next year. So that's kind of the process that we work towards. And so we're really glad that you guys took time out of your day to be here. We're here to answer questions. Will and Mark are here to answer questions. Clayton also is happy to answer questions. Clayton Rips is our Director of Transportation Planning and Development. So we're glad he's here. Wave, Clayton. And so now I will go ahead and open it up for some questions, if there are any questions.
I know that from Livonia to Bear County on Highway 87, I think 2026 is the start date on that project to widen that
I believe
section of
that's
highway.
correct. Yes.
What about south of Livonia? From Livonia towards Sutherland Springs, the traffic is absolutely horrible. And it doesn't make any difference if it's 6 o'clock in the morning or 6 o'clock in the evening.
Constant.
It's bad.
So I can kind of give you a brief on that.
No, that'd be great.
So from Livonia to Post Oak Road, all the way to Sutherland Springs, it's going in, and we're doing a rehab on that, and we're gonna do a continuous turn lane all the way through there. That's that. Post Oak Road, past County Road 342, okay, and that's gonna be a continuous turn lane through there. We'll improve that. There's also a speed limit study, going in from Livonia all the way through to 342 as well, to try to lower the speed limit. And then on the other side of Livonia, going up towards Bear County, that's that big 87 project that's gonna go to, 4-lane divided.
But that won't be till 2026, right?
But in between now and then, it's gonna be a seal coat on there to try to address some of the, skid resistant, and try to just preserve what we have out there, so it's not as major of a problem as well.
So again, south of Livonia, do you think the continuous turn lane is gonna help alleviate some of the traffic problems?
I do, because the traffic will be able to get off the road now and make their turns instead of stopping in the middle of the road to make the turns into their subdivisions or across the street, because they'll be the one in the middle and they'll be one on the left and the right.
I hope so. It's bad. The traffic is unbelievable there in the mornings and the evenings. I drive it every day.
And I think, that is one of our challenges, right? We don't always have money to add 2 lanes, but sometimes we can add that center turn lane or strategic right turn lanes that do actually make a bigger difference than what you may think they would make. And
Well, if the person is just gonna be sitting there in the turn lane, waiting forever and ever and ever to make that left turn. So why can't we have something more
some U-turns and center turn lanes in,
And lights.
medians.
Biggest difference is on that section of 281 north of San Antonio, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking at 300 feet of right of way in that section compared to what we have on 87, I believe, we're at 150
120.
at most.
Yeah.
And so that large of a project, we start to going to property owners to try to acquire land. It's just a more complex problem. The resolutions that Mark mentioned, the interim fixes should help. It'll get folks out of that direct lane of travel. Yes, they'll have to sit in the center, to make that left turn, but it gives them that refuge to get out of the way when that sand truck or that, frac truck is coming behind you at 70 miles an hour. It's not the complete fix, but it really does improve the safety conditions for that roadway.
And I would encourage you to still write on the map, your concerns with the volumes of traffic in those areas, because we continue to track those. It's not, it's not one and done. We'll continue to watch that. We continue to look at traffic volumes on our corridors. We continue to look at truck traffic volumes. We look at the crashes that occur, and try to look for solutions for that. And we try to look for money as often as we can for what we would consider those connectivity type projects, where we're having to widen a roadway to accommodate the growth that's going on based on population changes.
I was gonna wait until, for the maintenance and safety part of this thing, but
Okay.
537, you talk about improving something? I see you're gonna seal coat the part from 1922 back to 181 and also on 427. The worst part of that road is from 1922 to 123. There's no, you live on it, don't you? Yes. There's no shoulder, or at least there's a shoulder that's about 2 foot wide from 1922 to 181. From 1922 to 123, it's a little pothole every now and then out there where the shoulder would be. If you have to move over, and I drive that road real regular, I guess I can complain about it. And my trailer's out there bouncing off the side of the road, I replace those tires pretty regular. And it doesn't happen. I just, when I leave the house, I live in Stockdale, and I live south of Stockdale, so I drive 537 quite a bit. I can't wait till I get to 1922 to where the road widens just enough to where my trailer tires aren't driving off the road. I don't know, if somebody could consider that?
If I may, when we do the seal coat, and some of the commissioners kind of back this up, we go through and do level ups and all the base repairs on that road as well. We can't go and do a full widening because it takes so much material to do that, but we do go through and level it out and put the seal coat on top of it, kind of like we did out on 1303, 1922, that little stretch when we did do that. So they do go through, they do get a good leveling surface on it to try to prevent some of that bouncing around. Not gonna help too much on the lane widths.
I know, that's the deal. The lane width is what it is.
539 is the same problem from 97 to Sutherland Springs.
Yes.
A lot of that from roads there in Wilson County, we find, we still have roadways that you only have the 12-foot length. There's no
There's quite a few of the farm roads that are like that. There's some that are even more narrow than that one. Of course, it's only about 3 or 4 miles long, 538. You barely can't get a pickup without a trailer, without having to go off the road.
1347. No, and trying to find, how can I say, some, I don't want to say quick ways to widen the roadway, but there is a concern, with a lot of different roads here in Wilson County. We can talk to see if we can find ways to at least get a 2-foot shoulder. You'd be surprised how much a 2-foot shoulder adds to the overall width of the roadway, and just the driver comfort, as well. In previous counties, we've gone out and used a road widener to kind of just scab on, that shoulder. That's something we should look at, as well.
If you would,
There's
because
several roadways in the county.
the truckers have discovered it,
Yes,
and it's a shortcut from Floresville to 119 south.
yes.
And there's a little strip there that we've got that's banned through truck traffic, but that, I don't think they can read.
They don't listen.
I took it on my own. There was one stopped looking in his truck the other day, and I stopped him and I told him, I said, I work for the county, and you're not supposed to be on this road. He said, I won't get on it again. Yeah,
Liar, liar, pins on fire, right?
yeah.
So if there are, oh, yes, sir.
My question is, on 181, you have traffic counts, but within the last year, they have exploded. And they put a light at my subdivision, Shannon Ridge, which helps a lot. But the sand trucks, before that light turns green, you better look both ways, because when they come barreling down the highway, I've seen it 2 or 3 times, they just go right through the red light. If you pull it out, you got T-boned. But that's one problem. The other problem is all the traffic. As a kid, being raised here in Florida, I moved back in 1999. Anyway, I remember going to San Antonio with my parents to San Antonio, and it was a 2-lane road, 45 miles an hour. Yeah. And it went to what it is now, 4-lane divided. But with the traffic that's out there now, if you get in one of them logs going, you can get out of it, you just got to follow. And the trucks, sand trucks, like to have a race, see who can get there first. But they don't race, they just stack it up.
Right.
We need 6 lanes, big time. I've seen other highways that has hardly no traffic, and they got 6 lanes. But that's a big, especially from Floresville to San Antonio, because people come from Farm City through Floresville to go to work in San Antonio. And it's the same both ways. In the morning rush hour, it's stacked going that way, and it's stacked coming here. So it's not gonna get any better, it's just gonna get worse.
What does it take what do you have to be able to have, no trucks in the left lane? You have to have 3 lanes to do that, or can you do it with
I
2?
think that's only interstate.
Or that's only interstates?
Yeah. On the interstate either, exactly. Yeah, and I've never seen a US highway or any other lower functional class highway have the left lane restriction.
I would like to, I live on Farmer Market 2505, and it's narrow, and I don't appreciate having that 18-wheeler's wheel on my lane. And I'm having to drive, speed limit, 60. I'm having to drive on the right of way to keep from getting slide slapped from these people with these sand trucks, these 18-wheelers, whatever they're hauling. So what can we do to get FM 2505, that little, just add 2 feet on each side so I don't get run off the road. Now, if it's a tractor, I'll stop for the tractor. I'll pull over and let the tractor keep going.
The farm tractor, yeah.
Huh?
The farm tractors,
The
yeah.
farm tractors.
Yeah.
We're talking about the John Deere's,
Yeah.
Casey's,
Yeah.
Massey's.
You're good, you named them all.
Well,
You're not gonna take a favorite?
I like the word, I like John Deere.
Would the US highway justify for a 6-lane divider?
Oh, yeah, so I think one of the challenges, right, is the width of right-of-way that we currently have, and
But
so,
there's plenty of right.
so the restriction would be is that if we had to buy additional right-of-way to accommodate it, the county would have to be able to afford to purchase a percentage of the right-of-way purchase. So I think that's normally 10% would be the responsibility of the county.
87 is exempt because it's on the hurricane evacuation route. So 181 may fall in that as well.
181, they could close the median and put a median barrier all the way. Of course, there's red tape and everything.
Yeah, so really to add a lane, this brings us a good conversation, but to add a lane in a rural area, this goes back to what Darcy was talking about early on. Outside of the MPO boundary, that money to add a lane to a roadway in a rural area is hard to come by. US 87, the only
Not
dollar
a,
question.
unfortunately, not enough, right?
One too many.
One is too many.
It really takes one
If
too
it's-
many, that's really the answer, but it's that, so the MPO getting, that's one of the benefits if you do, whether it's all of Wilson County, a portion of Wilson County is able to join the MPO, it opens up a lot more money for these type of projects.
Because it is, the NPO lives in a big city, they don't know what it's like.
But they were getting,
But then you, if you join the NPO, then you have representation on the NPO board.
Someone sitting right up here would be able to sit on that representation.
Next question I have. Years ago, I saw a map in the newspaper or somewhere, State Highway 130. It went from Georgetown to Seguin where it stops now. And it showed the route going around Floresville, around Pleasanton, and tying into 35 down around Pearsall to Tucson. Whatever happened to this other half?
the Trans-Texas corridor.
Isn't that Interstate 69, what he's talking about, not one?
All the transit
He's
corridor.
thinking of
And-
the trans.
yes.
It was State
130,
Highway
130.
130 extension, and, that was,
What happened with that?
Well, so that wasn't a state project. But there's a portion of State Highway 130, segments 1 through 4, which are roughly from Georgetown to, I guess, around Mustang Ridge. That is owned by the department. And then 2 segments, 5 and 6, were from Mustang Ridge down to where it ties in Seguin that were privately constructed, and they are privately owned, or privately operated.
What about from
privately operated.
Seguin to 35 down south?
That, as far as I know, that is not a project that the department has on any,
It was on the map.
it was,
It
All of a
was.
sudden, it don't show.
It was.
It
but
was.
then-
If you go back and look, it'll be when George Bush was governor,
actually.
and
I
when he
think it was
left,
Rick Perry.
so did the project.
Yeah.
It was Rick Perry.
But the-
Perry.
But
Yeah.
the legislature did, in fact, enact legislation that completely took anything that resembled the Trans-Texas corridor off the books. So there's no more maps like that. We're not allowed to say those words anymore.
Well, you know, the truck traffic, you ever go to Austin? I mean, terrible.
I
And
live in
the
Austin.
reason they're not taking State Highway 130, because it goes to Seguin, but then they still gotta go through San Antonio.
Well, the other problem is they charge by the axle for those 18-wheelers to drive on 130. And it's very, very expensive.
But hey, you take all that traffic off of 35, you would relieve that problem.
Who's supposed to pay for that? You know what it costs to drive from Seguin to Georgetown in an 18-wheeler?
I drive on there and I never got a bill for it. You'll get it.
You must not be checking your mail, you'll get it.
You'll never do it again. I swear. I've heard in Austin, though, some of those highways, and they took my picture, and it's been over 2 years, and I haven't got the bill.
They send the bills to the 18-wheelers.
They do. All right, so,
Traffic is never gonna get any better, and electric cars is not gonna solve it.
That's Biden.
So, I want to go back to the sand truck traffic, and so I'm curious as to when you're next going to do traffic counts, because I think in the last couple of years, I don't know why, but there seems to be, they're almost on every single state highway, FM road that we've got. And one of our big challenges is just right down the street here where 536 comes into Floresville and then turns into 4th Street right here, and then they gotta go down, they get on 97, 181, wherever they're going, or cut back this way too. I don't know why they're going that way. It doesn't make any sense, because I see one truck going this way, and I don't know who's loaded and who's empty.
right,
But I'm just wondering when the next heavy truck traffic count would be
okay.
done, so
I'll
that-
have to ask that question at our division office. Our statewide offices are the ones that manage the traffic count program, and I can find out what that schedule is. They normally do it between September and May when school's end, but it's about every other year that you should see them come out and do those traffic counts.
So either they just finished or we got 2 more years.
Right.
It'll come out in May. It should be, usually they come out published in May.
So they just did one last year or this year? and then-
Right, that's
okay.
when it'll come out.
While we're talking truck traffic counts or whatever, I have a discrepancy here on this map. Highway 119, there's a little green part there that shows that it's 300 to 800 vehicles per day. And then right above it and right below it, it shows 800 to 1,600. There's no place that those vehicles are turning off and going anywhere.
Okay,
So if they leave Stockdale, they're going all the way through that green area there. Because I live there. I live where that 123 is, right there. And there's, if they cut off, they're going back over to 537. And one way, if they go 1347, then they're having to go back around to go back to Nixon. So there's no place for them to go. They're not saving any mileage turning there. So it should be just as yellow as the rest of it.
I
There's
think there's the same thing on 97.
on 119, so that was on 119.
119,
Okay.
right below Stockdale.
Okay.
Yeah, see, and I think it's,
Can you note that on your big map that you've got there with the traffic?
I
Okay,
tried
it's
here,
not-
but if I-
This is the
Yeah,
part
you-
that would be,
that's- So you're saying that there's a segment,
right, yeah, this part right here.
okay.
It's green on this map.
Yeah, that's what I was saying, noted on this
Yeah,
map
once they're on
that you've got
119,
here.
they're
gonna
not
keep
getting
it.
off of 119.
No, that's,
get you
we
another
have,
copy.
we have another, we have more.
Okay,
yeah, I think it's the same thing on 97 on your average traffic count. You got Mooresville, you're going to Pleasanton on 97. Those vehicles aren't, I don't think they're turning off going 30, because that's your total. So all your cars and everything else, I would.
I don't know if that's what,
No, this one right here.
From
Yeah, 'cause
2505
once
to
they're on 119, they're not
1344.
they're not getting off unless they go to somebody's house.
Yeah, they're going to Gillette or
They're going, that's it, going to Karnes County.
And then the same.
It could be that they're turning off on 1347 to avoid that intersection going down the hill.
I live there, there's no place for them to go. If they turn on 1347, they're either going back to 123 or back to Pandora. Oh, when I come out of that intersection myself, I'm trying to get out of their way.
Yeah, turning here,
Yeah, we can take a look.
and it may be just a small, minute difference, but it might have landed between that 4,000 and 4,001, and that's why it kicked it into that color change. But we will sure take a look at that.
What would it take to stop truck traffic from coming down 4th Street right downtown here?
So, that takes,
We have met with the city of Floresville, and they want to enact a truck ordinance to restrict trucks coming down 4th Street. And so we've been working with them. There's certain steps that need to be executed. We just can't eliminate all truck traffic, but with the city's help, we can try to keep them on certain routes. And so we've met with the city a couple times.
Is there GPS sending them this way? Is that reason they're
Yeah.
going?
It's possible. It's possible.
It is?
Yes.
Because they're not saving anything.
Right, no, or they might just know a quicker route, they might know if I go through town, I don't have to get on 181, I don't have to deal with anything up there. I mean, drivers are like water, they find the path of least resistance.
Yes.
And that includes truck drivers.
And no driver license.
that's a good analogy.
Well, and
Yeah.
that's what I was gonna say.
Like water.
The other part of that, if the city does work to get restrictions put in place, the other side of that is enforcement. Because if you don't enforce it, they're gonna keep doing it.
But where were you saying from? Because, I mean, what happens when they come in 536? I mean, when they get here,
From 536.
right, so they want to put a no through trucks at the city limits?
That's what they're talking, no, right at 536. I think it's for 4th Street, because if they're coming in 536 and they want to go out 536, they have no choice but to come through town.
Right.
But I believe what the concern is, the ones that come in 536,
That are coming into
they
town?
take Loop 181 to get to 97, instead of going to US 181 to get to 97.
Oh, you're talking about on 4th Street coming this way?
Yes,
They'd
yes.
they'd still be able to come in, turn left, and go to 97?
Coming in from 536?
Yeah.
So I guess the hard part was trying to keep the traffic on 536 to US 181 and avoid coming down on 4th Street to get to 97. And if trying to establish that route is the questionable part, because
Downtown.
downtown. And so,
The quickest route is 2505.
if they're coming 97, from somewhere up here, and instead of taking hospital to 181, most likely they wanna come 4th Street,
Right.
right directly to
I'm with
536. And so, but we've met with the city twice, and we're working to get the truck route initiated. So hopefully that will, but it goes back to enforcement as well. We can put up a sign, but if it's not enforced, it's really.
Yeah, because I mean, even I've seen, United, all these rental companies, they're coming down this way and going that way. But I mean, it's 4 red lights or 4 stop signs. I mean, to me, it doesn't make any sense, because you might catch the light green. But
Question, turn lanes, these turn lane on 775 between 1346 and 3432. 7 or 8 years ago, I think there was a proposal to install those. They were going to rebuild the highway and put in turn lanes. And about 5 years ago, they rebuilt it, and I inquired about the turn lanes. I said, well, the funding wasn't there now, so we're just going to rebuild it rather than adding them. I'm just wondering, is that still in the plans, long-range plans to add those?
There is a turn lane going in, right after the curve, going in towards Livonia on 775.
well, that's,
County Road 344. I don't have the map right here in front of me, but there is a project for a turn lane to go in. It's one of the high,
How far will it go out?
no, he's just talking about an area.
No, just that one,
for the one subdivision.
okay, because there's a new subdivision right there.
It's a safety initiative on that. I don't know the exact information.
Because that road from 319 or 3432 to Livonia in the mornings, with mothers and daddies taking their kids to school, it is crowded.
Is the new subdivision off of 775 or 3432?
It's one new subdivision's right there in the edge of town.
County
And it-
Road 344 and 775, right there.
Yes,
at the
County
edge of-
Road 344.
Okay, so this is where we're gonna have you guys come up
You'll
here
have to write on the maps.
and write it on the maps for us, so we
Because
make
don't
sure
know
we
where the
get
county
what
roads
it's.
are, we don't have those on the map.
Oh,
So just so, yeah, so, you guys know your areas a little bit better, and we've got some sticky notes that I have forgotten to put up here, but we'll grab them and put them up here as well. So we really wanna capture this here, and once we capture this, we're gonna go back and we're gonna create a spreadsheet. And we're gonna send that back out to everyone that signed up on the sheet. They gave us an email address. You'll get a copy of what we documented today. And if we didn't actually document it right, you'll be able to let me know that it was not done correctly and we can redo that. Then I want to encourage you, there is a comment sheet back there that has a QR code on it. You can take that QR code and share that with your neighbors, with your friends, with your network, and you can let them know that we have this public input process going on. And we'll be taking comments until April the 7th. So, yes.
Darcy, is there a formal process in getting Wilson County on this rural transportation board?
So the judge,
Do they have to vote on it?
No, the rural
No.
one, no, judge is a
judge
member
is
because
part
of
of the
ACOG.
RPO.
Okay,
Yeah, he serves on the RPO.
just checking to
Yeah.
make sure there wasn't anything different, because
No.
it kind of was,
Yeah.
The MPO is different though.
right, no,
Right.
right.
Yeah, so the RPO, you all are represented on it. And again, like I said, there's a QR code back there. Please share that. There is an online survey process. You can actually go on and you can pinpoint things on a map. Drop a pin
Make a
and
comment.
say, maintenance issue here, drop a pin, intersection issue here. People can actually go in and like that or dislike it. They can agree with you or disagree with you. So it's really nice. It's some of the new virtual tools that we have available to us since COVID, and not being able to come out and meet like this. And so we're encouraging, it's the first time we've used this platform. So we're encouraging people to do that. You guys can even today, if you want to go back and get into that, social pinpoint is what it's called. You can do that as well and put additional comments there. But that'll all be made part of the report.
You can see the presentation there, you can see all of these maps there, you can, comment on Wilson County, you can comment on
Any other
Karnes
county.
any of them. You can really zoom in, share that QR code with your friends, neighbors, distribution. Or write on stickers too.
So you want us to write on the map or on the
Yeah,
sticky?
both.
You can put
Either
right on
or,
both, either
whatever you
or.
want. So safety and maintenance, type projects, bike ped transit type projects, and, mobility and connectivity. So this is where you want that expansion of 181. You can draw it, write it, however you wanna do it.
And we really appreciate you all coming out here and being here today. So, Judge, I don't know if you want to close out your meeting as I go to that, or how you want to handle that, because we won't
Where's
come back
Catherine Oak?
after that.
I guess we can go ahead and adjourn and just everybody can give
Well,
input.
but do we need?
But here's the deal, all the county commissioners are still gonna be here.
I
Okay.
think we,
So
since we
you
have a
need to keep your
quorum,
meeting open. Okay,
So
that's
let's-
fine.
let's wait
No
and then
problem. Okay, perfect. So feel free, you have another question?
Mark, when are y'all gonna do the turn lane south of Lavernia on 87?
I think that was Matt's.
Which one do I write to? 119?
Yeah, so just, I did write something there. But you can check to make sure I wrote it right.
You got this? It's on here. Should be a copy in the back.
It's just a little strip, like from right there to right there.
There you go. That's it. Flip it over. Turn it over.
On this sheet right here? Yes, sir. So here is sort of Post Oak. Post Oak to Oakview Drive, widen and start continuous turn lanes. It should lit this summer. So we're into the design phase right now. It is a safety.
Okay.
Yeah,
Will, how you doing, sir?
if you want to add shoulders, or you want to add lanes, but
Seems like it, doesn't
think
it?
is necessary, and that's perfect. We're gonna take all this.
You got just a minute, Will?
To an Excel spreadsheet.
Short time, Mark.
There you go, just draw that line, highlight it too. Okay.
Because with their,
Wheel.
with their
Yes.
wheels on the edge of the road, they're on my side,
Right.
on my lane.
Is the whip, yeah. Yeah,
I'm Margie Hayden,
How are you doing?
just fine.
Good.
Margie, thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you. Darcy, well, go ahead, Dwight, if you got. The county infrastructure,
Here we go.
I don't know, well, who, my plight for this is the county infrastructure transportation fund.
Okay.
Every year that they do.
Yes, the CT.
They need to change their format as to how they allocate that money.
Yes, we've
I
had this
have,
conversation
yes, we've had this,
before.
and I want to stress it until I leave.
Yes.
You know, until I'm
No.
gone, because Wilson County needs. you
You're
know,
getting as much
We
impact.
get the traffic, you know, and Judge Hedke's on our side too.
Right. So, they did not refund that, they did not fund that program this year
didn't?
at the legislature. So there is no
Okay.
money coming up.
I was, I thought they were gonna do that.
Yeah,
I
and
wanted
I
to be
think
sure
we were
were
all a
in.
little bit surprised that
Bottom
they
line.
didn't do it. So my guess is that that'll have to come in the next legislative session.
Okay,
So keep it on, keep talking to your legislatures about that. We have also had other comments
Well, I've already
about
made all
that.
them mad, so I don't think that's gonna work.
We have, we'll make that part of the discussion in our report, because we've heard other comments associated with the CTIF funds, the CTIP funds, and so, yeah. We think they're a good revenue source, but like you said, maybe there's another way to allocate those funds, another way to, look at that formula.
Because if you look at it, the counties that surround us, Atascosa, Karnes, Gonzales, well, Guadalupe, just kind of a small metropolitan area itself.
Yes,
They have oil.
right, so
They
they
got-
get more.
But we're kind of in the
But
middle,
you're
and we don't get.
impacted by all of it. Yes, I get it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so we'll see if they,
We've
they
got-
fund the program again,
Let's-
hopefully.
Bless Karnes
No,
County.
we gotta have those loans while we're
Keep
still.
picking hard, this area right here, they're gonna pay it for us. We're not gonna have to put any money in on that.
Okay, yeah, I remember you talking about that one.
Yes. We'll have an agreement to maintain it, but as far as,
They're gonna, they're funding that through their CTIP? Nice.
yes. And they got the permission to do it,
Because it
so,
looks like this is.
to do it all
a,
themselves.
Just a seal coat project.
And us not get shorted any money and them.
Restoration project is,
And the legislature's been the one that set that formula. It's not set by Txdot.
I know.
And
But
so,
I was thinking somebody would have a little bit of pay flip there, say this is, because I know how it originally started. For 2 years, they didn't do anything because the first time it went to a vote, it didn't pass. Then they added more counties to it, so it passed, and then LaSalle sued
because they didn't feel like.
because they didn't feel like these other counties should get any money with their stupid fools.
In order to get here,
If it hadn't been, if it hadn't those counties, it wouldn't have passed again.
I mean, that's the politics of it.
It's politics, it's it.
It is. And, you know, and I, you know, a lot of the counties that we've been to, they're all
they built
really
this,
instructive. See, that's where they are.
they did a great
Yes.
job.
It's on 87.
But from Floresville,
We go to this week,
15
we go to
miles,
Gillespie
don't
tomorrow,
let
and
them pass
then
it.
we go on Thursday.
and you get behind one of them trucks, you're
No, Gillespie, they have,
who
I don't
designed
know how their traffic, this
traffic label. When I went
field,
around for that, you
No,
can't
they
pass
haven't
it.
had,
Yeah.
and they didn't get almost anything from.
I was thinking, because the sewer residents, they're,
Right, right there, 1344 is the only pass.
McMullen,
They get it,
They get
but
it.
they have very small population.
They have a
too.
very small population.
you know why that's not.
And they did get a pretty good, and they've been doing a lot of work with their CTIP.
they could fund it themselves. At one time, they were the, as far as,
Richest County.
even income, they were the, their income per capita was higher than the second highest in the nation, I think, for a county.
I know her too.
Judge Teal always gets money like that.
If I get them mad, I'm
We're
sending them to you.
excited to go to their new emergency operations center.
We've got one that's gonna be started one of these days,
Yeah, that's awesome.
doing it with our ARP money.
Okay, yeah.
We've needed it the most, it's
I was gonna say, I bet they talked somebody
You
into
know
it.
it,
the least safe building we have. So we had, where we have emergency management. It is a triple wide, it's a triple wide mobile home with the doors falling out.
Right there. Yep.
we'll get it one way or another. I ain't through yet.
Well, maybe they'll get
Everything
you a
under
road
control?
widening. Sir?
Y'all got everything under control
There's right now,
at this moment, right?
at this moment.
I don't know how to, no bike and ped
They can,
or transit, no transit needs,
what's that?
no transit needs.
No, not that, we've got all kinds of,
Mike, how are you, sir? Yes. So far. Are you? Be a busy place.
this needs somebody besides me to, for the bike and
Okay.
all of this.
Yeah, everybody, Livonia and Floresville all submitted
The
projects.
Floresville, you know, their deal they were trying to do, and I'm sure y'all have been involved on it, the old railroad.
Yes, they did get funding for a segment of it. That should start in the next 2 years, I believe. That'll be a really neat project.
Like you're talking about right here.
Comment.
What are you gonna transit? You gonna get your bicycle out and go to ride there?
No, I'm not, but I'm tired of running over bicyclers or having to avoid them. So I have a question.
Yes.
Because So 1303's already been upgraded to 1-foot shoulder on both sides.
Oh, yeah.
We have bicyclers here and here. This has not been upgraded, and I was thinking about recommending this one, but the only problem is 530. They're probably all I think a lot of them are making a circle, so I'm just trying to figure out the best way to
So
make that
there's
comment.
some make that comment. You think that there's a circle, that this is like a recreational route that they're taking?
Yeah, okay.
Draw it in
We
there
can,
and say
if
that.
that'll help us on 537, we'll put bicyclers on there.
And actually, so we don't get, funds strictly for bike and ped. We do get for ped to bring up accessibility, for ADA, but when we know that there's like a route where riders are at, that can be documented when we're doing maintenance type projects, and it can increase the width of the shoulder or the type of, aggregate that we use to accommodate cyclists that are using that area. So, yeah, it's good things to document, and we've been trying, my goal is when I see a shoulder widening project is to ask for a minimum of 4 feet when I know it's a bicycle route. Preferably 5, but a minimum of 4.
I live on 119 south of Stockdale, and it's got I used to drive my tractor on a lot more than I do. I don't, unless I just have to move it somewhere.
Right.
I don't. I used to carry a bale of hay down. I got a place a mile and a half down the road. I used to carry a bale of hay down there anymore.
Yeah.
I've got a little buggy that I hook on behind my pickup, and it's got 8 foot wide. That's the one that when I'm going down the
Yes.
537 over here. That's the one that bounces off.
Because of the pavement.
Because
roughness.
it's then you allow the people that are on the riding the line to their
My
move
understanding is
goes
they
bouncing
found out
down
who
the
needs
road.
to move it. They're in the process of making it move.
Oh, good. And I'm also at County Road 111.
Right.
Which had the seats drummed down,
Yep.
dump.
Yep.
Showing him that I think we've got some human traffic.
I'm gonna hit
Because I've had
Will
doors
with
left open.
the CTIF deal.
And I have
Yes.
lost. And that just, I'm
Yeah.
sorry, the wind is not going to be. When you have a deadbolt.
There's so much of that.
Gary?
Sure, you bet. Nice to meet you.
Maybe you can have some.
So this one. Is your sign-in sheet still there in the back?
Counties surrounding us do, and they're trying to like we get the traffic.
Yeah, we will
Yes, ma'am. We run it.
Yes, sir. What? We didn't bring home. Take care.
But there's also, yes,
What kind of softball? Softball game in the Bears, you won't be there. I used to love it, right? Once you get those things, German game, nothing out there, and what I was taught back then, they were pretty much. But if you close your eyes, you might need to deal with an animal or a pig or something. That's always what you gotta pay attention to, like that. Definitely. Good deal. I got it. So that, to me, that's the bottom line. Get it this tree. You gotta see it. Apple, you got I'll tell you a lot of stuff. I'll tell you a lot of stuff. Yeah, big rig. A big rig. You ain't gonna make me mad if you tell me that. At least then I know where I stay. Yes. Yes, I wish everybody was that way. But that tell me right quick, which way I'm wasting my time, or I'm doing all right. As it is, it's still a flip. We're good. Be careful going to Tula. Yes, sir. Good luck to her this evening. We'll see you. Yes, sir. Huh? It is what it is. I don't know how to fix it. The DPS back out here to work. I did it for 30 years. They was working out here every day on patrol instead of off going to the border. They fix a lot of this traffic. Because they say presence has an effect on drivers' control and attention. When you don't see anybody, they forget all about it. They end up doing what they want to do, and they don't start paying attention. They want to stop accidents. They need the DPS back up there working the roads. For some reason, the black and white car, a whole lot more stroke out there. It does. I retired in 2007. We were just starting to get traffic. I did all 30 years. We didn't work. 25 minutes worth of work. And now my guys working in deep in. And it's because there's no active enforcement patrol. Because they don't see it. Our philosophy, and it was taught to me 40 years ago, visibility, when you got 25 miles from here to here, if you run into them here for 15 minutes, even if you don't stop them, they don't think. 15 minutes later, they know I'm here. So you got them through this county actually paying attention right there. Just because they saw your car. That's it. And that doesn't happen And I understand why, but that's where the focus is.
Does anybody else?
Is actually traffic.
You got anything on their bicycle or?
No, I wouldn't get on a bicycle on a bet around Livonia. Get your ass run.
On 119 where I live, like I said, I used
I horse
to.
and buggy anymore.
Yeah, you can't.
No, I used to take my horse and buggy and we'd go to town, bro.
Let's do it.
He has one,
I'm
or
ready.
had one.
That's a good thing.
Didn't you have one?
Yeah, I just found out, my wife called me a while ago, our buggy horse that she drove in the Southern Springs Parade here a couple months ago, she died this afternoon, so I gotta go home, I gotta go home and bury a horse.
Dig a hole?
Yeah.
Call Brandon, maybe he'll do it.
I don't
Yeah.
imagine.
Can't wait till then to widen the roads and do like all these other big cities. Traffic can't get nowhere.
Do you have any additions to the map for bike ped issues, things you see out there?
Really need to have the plan to
I was just telling him the traffic is so horrible and it's
once the traffic's there,
so many wrecks around Livonia, I wouldn't get on a bicycle around there.
If you had somebody that was more familiar, they would have, for here in town for this, it would have been better, but like I said, I'm not familiar with it. I
projects you've
don't do
done,
the bicycle
all
deal.
I did is listen to the things that you right.
Yeah, we used to actually saddle, help harness our buggies up and go into town on
Construction
775.
rules to make it better. They don't drive the whole time.
No, when I go to turn into my driveway, I'm looking in my rear view mirror to see whether I need to hit the gas to keep from getting run over.
It's an awful feeling.
Yeah, it's terrible.
Is anybody else doing anything with
Piece
the
right here, and I'll go to Floresville.
maps?
I think we're almost done, so you can probably call the meeting.
Yeah.
Because the GPS won't tell.
Has anybody else got anything that's relevant to what we're doing here with Txdot? If not, we're adjourned at 3:37.
Where's that gap?
Yeah.
There you go.